Okay, I would like to thank everybody for joining us. Again, the response is overwhelming. We're going to be letting people in as we go through, as people catch up to the time zones. The response is overwhelming. We have had record number of applications over the last few years. It's just been crazy. This is such a successful lab. Ruth does an amazing job. We've got Dennis hiding in the background. He's another one of our mentors. I'll pull him in after. I wanted to introduce myself. My name is Shelly Quade, and I am the Talent Programs Manager for the Whistler Film Festival. So I run all I think we're up to 14 labs now. This one is very highly successful, so it's a really busy one. It goes, Ruth will give you an idea of how long it goes, but anyway, it's quite a job. We've got Linda Hayes also. She's the coordinator for the lab, but she's on holidays right now, so we won't be able to see her. But we're going to be your connections to the program if you have any questions. I'm just going to read a couple things from from the festival. So we acknowledge that the Whistler Film Festival takes place on the traditional unceded territories of the Squamish Nation and Lillooet Nation. We honor their language, culture, and history. I am currently on Treaty 1 territory and the national homeland of the Red River Métis. In the past years, the Whistler Film Festival showcased Screenwriter Lab film premieres, including Jules Koustachian's Broken Angel, 2019 alum Julia Lederer with Love at a Major Organ, and we have Julia here. And Amir Kanamui's Harbor House, Little Orphans by writer and actor Emily Bridger, and the award-winning A.W. Hopkins Indian Road Trip. And they're all scripts that went through our labs. Other success stories include Jessica Landry from Screenwriters Lab 2020, and her lab script, My Only Sunshine, participated in the Blood in the Snow Horror Development Lab in November 2023, and she was awarded the $10,000 production credit for it. 2021 alumni, we have Jen Walden's mother and our lovely Aisha Evelyna. Seahorse received telefilm funding for their projects, and they're currently, I believe, in the production stage. The mandate of Winnipeg, sorry, that's where I am in Winnipeg. The Whistler Film Festival is to discover, development, and showcase talent. We do this with our slate of talent programs, through our industry market gathering, our content summit, and of course, the Whistler Film Festival itself. We champion new and independent voices in Canada, and we strongly urge our applications from writers with a wide diversity of perspectives and experiences. Selection into this program, and you're going to hear more about that today, it's highly competitive. You're expected to work hard on your own, but with the support of a mentor. In between the intensive workshop weeks, it takes time to write and rewrite. This session that we're in today, it's a safe space for sharing information and asking questions. I'm going to ask that you use the chat for some questions if you want. And if we have time for live questions, which we're going to try to do at the bottom of the hour, we're going to open it up to those questions, and I may be pulling you into the screen, but for now we're just going to keep it just in this format. So please message me, or you can message Linda, and I'll put our email addresses into the chat later if you have any questions or concerns, anything about the program, and we'll get back to you, because I don't think we're going to get to all the questions we have. So just a reminder, it's probably best to just keep your camera and your microphone off for the interview portion. It can be a bit distracting, but otherwise, I'm going to pass this over to Ruth, and she's going to introduce herself as well as our guests, and I will hide in the background. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Shelly. And Dennis, you let us know if you want to say hi. Okay, so thank you, Shelly, and thank you to our fabulous alumni. I love you guys, and I'm so excited that you came and that you're going to share a little bit about your lab experience. Dennis Foon, our other mentor.
Hi, Dennis. Sorry, Dennis. Couldn't let you get away with hiding.
It's so great to see everybody, and welcome to all. I hope you'll get a really good overview of what happens in this lab and how hard we've worked to make this a world-class opportunity.
Yeah, thank you. Well said. So I'm obviously the facilitator of the lab. I'm a story editor. I'm based in LA, Canadian roots. And I love story, and I love nurturing screenwriters, and we take this program very seriously. We're Dennis and I super passionate about it. The entire team's passionate about it. And I just want to dive in and hear from our alumni who are, you know, their words speak much louder than ours because they are all a testament to how fabulous the lab is. So, Adam, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself? And I'd love to also know your log line for the project that you took through the lab.
Okay, I'm sure I can cobble that together. Yeah, my name's Adam. I'm a Vancouver-based writer. I've been working a lot in TV lately, most recently on Heartland, and tend to write a lot of dramas, which is also why I did drama feature. And so the project I did at the lab was called Nowhere's Home. And it's basically a story of a girl living in the US, basically grew up there, and at 18, basically finds out her parents brought there illegally, and she's deported back to Egypt, which is where my family's from as well. And she basically doesn't speak the language, doesn't know anyone, and kind of has to figure out her life. And so it's about kind of the immigration story of that, and then also a bit of a coming age story for her as well.
Awesome. Thank you. Aisha?
Hi, my project that I had at the 2021 lab was called Seahorse. Seahorse is about a woman who is working as a sous chef in a restaurant, and she's working really hard to get back on her feet after like a lengthy stint in a mental health facility. And then one day she's going home from work and she falls off her bike, and the person that comes to her aid happens to be her unhoused father, who she is estranged from. And so for reasons unbeknownst to her, she decides to take him home, and chaos ensues. No, there's no chaos. Drama ensues. But yeah, I live in Toronto. It's balmy 2 degrees and gray per usual. And yeah, I like, my thing is like, I guess as a filmmaker, as a writer, I'm really interested, and as an actor, I'm really interested in movie projects with like socio-political undertones, if that makes sense. And so I brought a drama, but I'm like kind of genre agnostic and kind of just interested in like pushing the needle forward toward like making world peace, like for real though.
Awesome. And you are in the Vale, well, maybe I'll hold
Oh yeah.
Well,
that.
no, if you want to give an update.
That, yeah. Also, unbeknownst to many of you, I've spent a lot of time crying to Ruth about the draft of my script. Like I got it into such a good place in order to get access to telefilm funding after I did the Whistler Lab. But like we shoot this coming July, and so I was trying to get a shooting script together. I just finished that, and Ruth is still my story editor, and I still cry to her. So. Yeah, if you're not crying when you're writing, you're not doing it right. So basically, that's a lie. So basically, we're shooting it this coming July. Yeah, so we got some money to do it.
Yay! I feel like you cry less now, by the way.
Oh, that's so nice to hear. My therapist will be happy. I'll report back.
Yeah. And Julia.
Yeah, I was going to say, I feel like both Ruth and Dennis can attest to the fact that I also have done a lot of crying about my own script. So I feel like it is part of the process, right? Like you want to be emotionally invested in your world. I think it's normal. But anyway, I'm based in Toronto. I still work as a playwright. I started in theater, yeah, I've made some short films and done some different things going into the Whistler Lab. The feature that I wrote within the lab is called With Love in a Major Organ, and it's actually an adaptation I did for my own play. So that was a big learning curve in itself, figuring out how to do that, which was really interesting and challenging and also exciting at the same time. Yeah, and I guess, the logline or that film is, it takes place in a world that's kind of like a sidestep outside of our own, and a woman pulls her heart out and sends it to someone who she cares about, and then has to sort of decide if she wants to exist in the world as a detached person and let this person kind of run away with her heart, or if she wants to re-engage and go after it. Sort of the Cliff Notes version. Yeah.
And right now, just a status update on it.
Yeah, so we were very lucky. We premiered at South by Southwest last year, and then since then have gotten to do lots of sort of fun and interesting festivals, Whistler being one of them, which was so lovely and fun to get to go back and do. And then now we have a few more Canadian festivals, maybe some others, I'm not sure, but we are going to have a US theatrical and a Canadian theatrical release at some point this year, I think likely April. And then I'm assuming it will stream somewhere. I don't know where yet, but some steps before that. So yeah, it's exciting. It's great.
It was lovely to be able to see it in Whistler, and that is really what we're and Hope for Seahorse is the same way. You know, a big part of this lab. It's the story development and the script development, and of course, you know, we want always to write the strongest script possible, because it's also we're you know, hoping that by going through the lab, your you know, writing abilities are strengthening as well, right? So that's obviously a piece of it. And then we really want to help you make it. So the lab is not just story development or script development, it is also career building, and hopefully helping you facilitate making the connections, developing a pitch deck, doing all the learning the business skills that you need, the industry skills, so that you can actually make your piece. Coming full circle, we hope that you then screen at Whistler, so that you know, where you sort of brew the idea and develop it comes to completion, or the first step of that journey at the festival. So what I think is really unique about our lab, not many labs have this, where they are both creative and business. You know, it's a sort of all-encompassing lab. And I think the three of you actually show a different piece of all of that. You know, Julia, with your film being finished, Aisha, with you being in the process of getting ready to shoot, and Adam, I think your journey is actually, even though your film didn't get made yet, I think that you know, you moved forward in a lot of ways, and I'd love for you to just maybe share about what you feel like you might have gotten out of the lab that helped you move forward, even though your film didn't ultimately yet get made.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely feeling like the wildly unsuccessful one right now. But no, I think, yeah, there's so many things, but I mean, ultimately, I think, so I did the lab in 2019, and then I went kind of immediately into doing the Pacific Screenwriting Program. And I think having this lab kind of on the resume helped quite a bit. I was kind of applying and interviewing for PSP at the same time as I was doing the lab, and that certainly helped quite a bit. And also just getting my name out there more. The first show I got hired on after both of these this lab and PSP, it was kind of, I was talking to the showrunner and creator, and she kind of said, you know, I'd known her before, but she was also kind of the last person I would have expected to reach out with the job. And she was also the type of show she was doing. I was very surprised, but it worked out. But part of the reason she mentioned reaching out is because she's like, I know you a little bit, of course, but also I've seen your name doing all these things. And Whistler, I feel like, has really been one of those that can really stand out for people, and it gets your name going, and people really recognize it in the industry, and it really helps quite a bit. And so I think in that way, it really helped as a jumping off point from there to PSP, and then going forward. And I was able to get an agent and start getting hired in rooms and that kind of thing.
That's awesome. And PSP, it's a Pacific Screenwriting Program, right? And maybe you mentioned that, but I'll just and yeah. Was seeking representation, was that sort of a primary goal of yours? Like after the lab, was that something that you were focused on?
I mean, it was definitely felt like the step that I wanted and needed. It was, yeah, I mean, it was also, I tend to just think of it more holistically of like the getting repped will come as you kind of have successes like this and get into labs or get hired for things. So it was on my radar, and it was something I was kind of actively seeking, but also understanding that it's one of those things that kind of just comes when the time is right, if you're doing all the right things, which again, getting into the lab was, I think, a big part of.
Yeah, I think representation often is the thing that follows everything else, right?
Exactly, yeah, totally, yeah.
Sometimes you think, when I get the representation, then my career, like I'll be able to, but it's actually the other way.
Yeah, I mean, I also, like, I had a kind of cold emailed a lot of reps kind of pre all of this stuff, and some of them did respond, surprisingly, but they kind of read it, and even if they're interested, they're still kind of looking for someone who they can really see has done some things, and they're putting their kind of effort behind someone who not just can bring them in money, but is also someone who's, you know, done the work and is doing the work, and they can kind of believe in and fight for. And yeah, so I think that helps quite a bit.
Yeah, Awesome. Julia, so back to your, I'm curious to know what else you feel you might have gotten out of the lab. Obviously, a film, which did come in with some funding, right? When you started the lab, you actually had a big chunk of your place.
Yeah, we had I had the experience, maybe this is useful. We had applied before the lab, like the year before, to Talent to Watch, a telefilm, and been shortlisted but not gotten it. And then the next time, our producer Madeline Davis said, you know, I don't think Talent to Watch is enough for us to make this. So let's try for a regional, and we did, and we got it. So there is something, I guess, to be said for going for the bigger thing if you need it. And so I did come into the lab knowing that we had that funding, and the director that I worked with, Kim Albright, she was in the middle of going through the CFC, the Canadian Film Centre program, as a director, and it was her project there. So I wasn't there as a screenwriter or anything. It was the project that she was working on as a director, but there was a little bit of interaction. And so we had some sort of, I guess she had some sort of like resources and support there. It was a bit funny because I think she was the only director in her year that wasn't writing their film as well. So I did go up from time. So we had that support as well. But the lab was great for me because it was an opportunity to really focus on the script outside of that. Because I think I was also still figuring out what I thought the adaptation was and what would feel the most solid and connect to the play, but also like a different thing, because I really felt like it had to be. And so to have that space and that focus and that support in the lab was incredibly useful, just in terms of figuring out my perspective to then bring to the collaboration. And outside of that, I mean, I feel like our year was so lovely. I'm sure every year is, and I feel like I'm still in touch with lots of people who were in the year with me, and that has been just really lucky, I think. I mean, it's so great to know people who are doing the same thing as you in their own way, and to be able to connect and support one another over those experiences. And yeah, I think that was the biggest thing, which feels sort of the most important because of the longevity that it has. Yeah.
Well, I'm so glad you mentioned that, because you know, community building is a huge piece of what we do. You know, like, writing is a very solitary, can be very lonely, can be very frustrating, can, you know, imposter syndrome, self-doubt, all of that. And so we really work strongly to bring the 6 in the cohort together, so you can support each other. And one of the ways we do that is that the 6 participants read each other's material, and we have group feedback sessions where everybody is offering thoughts on each other's scripts. So you become quite intimately involved in each other's material. And our hope with that is that you will, you know, maintain that connection and that support of each other's work way after the lab. And we're definitely seeing that. I mean, there's nothing that makes Dennis and I happier than when we hear that you guys are all getting together, or, you know, even just texting each other, because you need to have that community. So there's a big expectation for those people who would participate in the lab that you will do that. So if you feel like, I don't want to read other people's material, lab's maybe not for you, because that is a really big, you know, piece of it all. Or if you don't want, you know, your peers reading your material, then another lab is probably a good choice, because there's a big expectation that you will show up for the rest of the cohort. Aisha, I know that you hang pretty regularly with some of your people, right?
Yeah, and also like across the years as well. But yeah, so like Martina and Andrea, like I was just out in Vancouver, so I got to see them, and it was just so nice. But like one of the things is, like, when you read someone's work, you kind of get a chance to know them in a way, which is all like, which I think there's like a reinforced version of trust. But then also, like, Brandon Hackett lives around the corner from me, so like I see, and he's a tall Black man. So like every now and then I'm like, it's you. And we, like, if I'm not accosting him from across the street, we hang out. So yeah, it's like kind of like community. Like this industry is not for the faint of heart. It's not easy. And in many ways, I'm kind of just like, if you kind of can't have fun with the people that are also kind of trekking along, then it's like not worth it, because it doesn't reward you enough to be worth it if you're just alone typing at your computer. And like, you learn so much by reading and learning through like learning and reading other people's work. And like, also, if you have a problem with people reading your work, like good luck, because like Martina was so much nicer to me than like distributor guy A, who's kind of like, so homelessness is sad. And you'd be like, yeah. And they're like, it's not going to sell. Like, you kind of just, it helps us get it. Like, it won't though. Like, I've been told this many times, but I think it's like getting, like, I really appreciated the relationships just because, I don't know, I'm an extrovert, as you can probably tell, but what else is there if you're not collaborating and like bouncing ideas off of other people?
So with you on that, exactly. I'm a little bit curious if you could maybe share sort of how you feel, how hard you had to work, I guess is the, because it's rigorous. You can't phone in your participation to this lab. And I think maybe there's a little bit of a learning curve for everybody who goes through it. It's like, oh shit, this is actually, oh, can I swear? This is going to be a lot of work, right? Like, and there's the week in September, in, May, when we'll meet in Whistler. But the summer mentorship, I think, is actually where you do, you're kind of starting over. We often, you finish the lab and it's kind of like we've shaken the snow globe and now you're starting with a new outline and maybe several drafts of that outline. And I feel like that the sort of 3 to 4 months there is maybe the most rigorous part. And I'm curious if you could maybe speak to that. Adam, could you, I know you and I did a lot of excavating.
Yeah, for sure. The script definitely, it evolved so much over that time, and it was definitely, it's a lot of work, like so many things in this industry. And writing is just, it's also how much you're willing to put in is what you'll get out of it. And for me, it was like, and taking advantage of having, whether it's Ruth or Dennis or whoever as your story editor, like it just, to have someone like that you can work with, and who are, both of them, and I got to work specifically with Ruth, and she was just so wonderful and very great of just, I still remember her just being like, I don't want to prescribe anything, but she was just so good at getting to the heart of, okay, this is what you're trying to do. How can I get you there? And having someone like that kind of in your corner and helping steer you there, and to not sort of work as hard as you can over those months and really just take advantage of that. And I don't remember how many drafts I gave you, but probably a decent amount. And I think to not take advantage of that and really just work so that by the time, December comes and you're going to the lab and you have this thing, it really is in kind of the best shape it possibly can be in. So I definitely be prepared to kind of put in as much effort as you possibly can, and really, that rigor, so that you can, again, take advantage of these wonderful mentors and have something that you're at the very least very proud of at the end of it. And then also obviously to take to the festival and meet people and try and, take whatever the next step is for you on that project.
I love that. Exactly. Yeah. You did. And you worked really hard. I really feel like you really brought it, you really dug in, and you were working full time at the time, right? So it wasn't.
And also I'll just add, like, again, even though I haven't found the way to get this made yet, I also feel like I grew as a writer so much in that time, like to work on a project and do draft after draft of it and figure out what's working and figure out what isn't. And especially when it's something you feel so close to and so passionate about, like I felt like I found so much as a writer in that, and even just, finding my voice a little bit more on the page and things like that. Like I came a long way in a very short amount of time. And I think that at the very least that can happen for everyone if you really put that work in.
Awesome. I love that. Julie or Aisha, you want to speak to that sort of intensity?
Work?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm like, I actually like I used to feel like ashamed in saying this, but I don't anymore. I am a writer that does not enjoy writing. I will do anything to not be in front of my computer. It is a compulsion where it doesn't leave me alone. And so like, I would say the rigor, it's kind of just like as as Adam said, you just become a better writer because you have to double down on like what you're trying to share in the world through your story. But I remember burning the midnight oil. Like we had a draft due in like September or something, and I was just like, okay, I'm gonna be up until 3 a.m. And like that's what it was. That's what it was. But I just think it's a testament to, like, for me, it was like I grew a lot as a writer, but like in a personal way as well, kind of like not necessarily knowing, like surprising yourself. And I think that's what this allowed me to do, because there are a lot of people like, and we're all humans just trying to work our way through the world. Like, you know, it's a weird place right now in general. That like are like, I'm going to get to that script, or like, I need to turn over that draft or what have you. And like, for me as a person, I need a carrot to chase. And so it's like nice to be like, it is due on this date. And like, you know, that you're just going to have a package that you can just like share to a producer when you're done or what have you, because you'll have your deck, you'll have your pitch like ready to talk about. And like, you'll also just have like a better draft than you had before. So I'd say the amount of rigor, yes, you get out what you put in. But for me, it was kind of just like not knowing, like surprising yourself. And like, if you really, and like learning, like, if you really want to get something made, like this is just like kind of what you have to go through, because it's not easy. It's like, it's just not like the dude in the baseball cap. It's like, yeah, just like get your friends together and like go up north to your mom's cottage and like shoot a movie. It's not that, because you want your movie to be good, which means writing and writing and writing and writing.
And more writing, even though you hate it. Julia?
Yeah, I mean, I would just echo that too, in that like the rigor is challenging, but it's also exciting because you know you're going to come up with something. And so you do, and you're also challenged to like break apart a thing that can be done in so many different ways, which I think, especially if you're working on an indie Canadian film, as it gets closer to production, you have to be able to change so many things. So already like starting to learn how to change things and how to think about scenes in more open ways is really, really useful to start doing earlier in the process. And a lot of that was just also, yeah, trying to figure out how to create something that could be made and being open to changing things that maybe you thought were set, but they actually aren't, because you get to, that you invented it, so you can find other things to do too. Yeah.
Love that. Okay, I know we have to, and we're going to shift to Q&A, but hopefully this is giving everybody a sense of sort of just the overall sort of expectations and rigor of it all. Just really quickly, I'd love to, like, obviously, Aisha, you are going to be shooting a movie, but any other, just kind of like a tiny update about what's next and what's ahead for you? Aisha, I'll go with you. Other than you're making a movie, but anything else that's upcoming for you? I mean, I know The Drop is doing.
Yeah. Oh yeah, The Drop, my show. So I have a digital series. We just finished our like the first round of like CSA voting. So like fingers crossed, mid-February we'll get a couple of noms, and that's always helpful. But yeah, like I also developed a project in the Canadian Academy's writing program. So I have that. So basically it's just like peddling my things, being like, what do you want? You want a comedy? You want a drama? Like I feel like the guy outside of like a stadium, like scalping tickets, being like, what do you want? What do you want? So I just like, for me, I just like have interesting things on my slate, and I'm shooting this movie, so that has a lot of my attention, but I'm also just trying to continue to work in this industry as an artist because I like it a lot.
Awesome. Julia, what's next for you?
Yeah, so I have a second feature that I developed with this director Jordan Canning, which was great. It's such a different, I'm learning that working with different directors, obviously, because everyone's a different human, is it's like a different conversation, and that's kind of exciting because it's fun to do things that are different. But so that feature now is at the point where she and my agent and her agent are starting to take it out and look for funding sources. So we'll see if that happens or not, but I have another script I'm proud of, so that feels good. And then otherwise I have a couple of pilots I'm working on, and I have a new play that I think I'm going to do a workshop of in Dallas later this year with theater. Things seem to come from random places for me. So just kind of doing a bit of everything and writing some new things too. Yeah.
All right, awesome. And what about you, Adam?
Yeah, still mostly in TV, been on Heartland for a couple seasons now, and I've kind of had a chance to move up in that room. And so we're still waiting for an official green light, but kind of knock on wood that that show continues forever and ever and ever. And then otherwise, just also, yeah, developing. I have a couple of pilot series that are in development with some producers right now. So working on those the next little while, and hopefully make more things in Canada on TV as well. And one of those gets off the ground, but yeah.
Awesome. Excellent. I love you guys so much. Makes me so happy to, I don't know, just to see you guys and see your successes. And it really, really, really is, as I said, Dennis and I, the whole team's super passionate about it. And we just want you to thrive and go out there and tell your stories and make your material and grow and learn and be the fabulous humans you are in the rest of the world. So, yeah, makes me happy. And I could talk to you all day, but I know Shelly will get mad at me if we don't end. So,
no,
or not end, but skip the Q&A.
Everybody stick around because you may have some questions directed right at you as to your experience. So from here, we're going to go right into the Q&A, but just 1 minute prior, Ruth, can you just give everybody an overall idea of the application itself? Because, we're going to get questions about each of the sections, which we won't have time to go through, but what's important to you and what happens when they apply? What's next?
Well, so we're looking at the overall, when you apply, we're looking at the piece of material, right? The script, what state, kind of where that's at. And the script doesn't have to be fully polished. If it's polished, you don't need the lab, right? Like if it's ready to shoot tomorrow, you don't need a development lab like this, right? So we are looking for pieces that are, works in progress, right? Like kind of, but that said, if it's too sort of finding its way into kind of like you're still discovering it, maybe it's not ready for a lab, right? So there's a little bit of a sweet spot. We don't want it too polished. We don't want it too like your very, very first draft, right? Probably not quite ready, but knowing that it needs some work, that's totally fine. Really what I'm always zeroing in on is do you know what you're trying to say? Have you really gotten a good sense of like what you're, what you want it to express, and maybe that's still like it's a diamond that needs to be polished, but which is fine. But you should have a sense of the kind of stories you want to tell, kind of where the general direction it's heading, because then you're in a good place for others to come in and to help you shape that, right? That said, there's still a lot of discovery around what, what your voice is, what the piece is. So there's still lots of room to grow, but the pieces that have the most potential have a clear theme or are heading in that direction. And they can be rough. They can be any genre. They can be any, it doesn't have to be a genre. Like all of these pieces here, they're all different genres. They can be set in other places, like Adam's was set in Egypt. Although, Adam, you made a really good point earlier that because, maybe a quarter of your piece was set in the US, which was problematic as far as raising financing, you feel. So
yeah, I don't want to cut in too much, but just something to consider. I wouldn't make it the deciding point, but if you have a couple of features you're deciding to, if you can pick one that feels very makeable in Canada, I think this program is wonderful for that, and it will connect you with all the right people. If it's something that feels much bigger in scale or a bit more difficult, then maybe steer away from that one.
Thank you. You just said beautifully, because that's exactly it. We want to help you make it. And we're not against like co-productions for sure. So it can be set someplace else, but it should feel like it can be made within this sort of Canadian system. So I think, thanks, Adam. Now you said it perfectly. But any genre, any, it's all good. We love it all. So we're looking for the piece of material, but we are also looking for a writer at the right place in their career. If you are, very, very emerging, I think you would find the lab very challenging because we were talking about story at a high level. There's a commitment to the other writers, so brand new is maybe not, you might want to wait till you have a little more experience, right? Have you made 25 films? Well, then you probably don't need the lab either, right? But if you've made, we do kind of expect that you've made, perhaps a couple of shorts or, and you can be a writer, director, producer, whatever. But so we're kind of looking for that mid-level, where you've got, so you definitely understand the business, you are, well-versed, but not sort of like super brand new, but also not like experience. Like we had a filmmaker last year who was on her third feature, right? No, that's third or fourth. Yeah. And that was great. That was a perfect fit. And we're also looking for a cohort where people are at some complementary places, right? So we don't necessarily want everybody to be on their fourth feature and everybody to be on their like first feature, right? So it's nice to have that balance. So I would say, you know, kind of mid-level, mid career is what we'd be looking for. Also, most important with that is that you are committed to a career in filmmaking. If this is, you know, maybe like a vanity project or kind of a one-of, or you're kind of not sure, like, I don't know if I want to be a screenwriter, I'd like to try, that's awesome, but the lab is not for you. We are supporting writers in the long-term process of their career. So if you are not sure, if that's not kind of, if you're not doing all the other things, like taking the classes and networking and being on Facebook in Canada and doing all that, then once again, those are the things we expect, because we're going to give a lot to you and we want you to move forward. And so if you're sort of like flirting with a career in screenwriting, I would say wait until you're really ready, because we want to support you in the long-term development of your career. So commitment, being the right place in your career, and also the kind of material. We're looking for a balance of all of those things. Sorry, that was such a long-winded answer. I've just taken up all the time.
And we have some questions on our website. Make sure you go to that page too, so that we don't repeat too much. But I'm going to ask Sarah. Sarah Caspian has a question for us.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for this opportunity. So my question is that, first of all, my script is about postpartum depression, and I've been incredibly lucky in terms of the resources that I've had for research. Every single woman that I've shared a glimpse of my script with, they've shared something about themselves or someone that they knew. So in the process, I've learned a lot about women's journey with, you know, motherhood and postpartum depression. I've read about or I've listened to 100 something stories. However, learning more about the male perspective has proven to be challenging. Like, you know how men don't talk about, I don't know, issues. And as a result, like the only male character that I have suffered immensely. And the feedback that I've received is that he's one-dimensional. So I don't know if that is a writing issue per se. It's more of an inspiration issue. Is this something that the lab can help us with when I guess we don't know how to go about a character or find resources to learn more about, like I said, the male perspective. And also, I want to say that in my journey, it's been a 14 months script. For me, it's been a really long time. I applied last year. I didn't get in. I wasn't ready. But I've spoken to a therapist who suffered herself as a, suffered from postpartum depression herself and has been treating it, or a life coach has been dealing with the same issue. And like these people help me elevate the story, and they offer to read the script, but I'm like still a little like embarrassed to share it with them. I don't think it's fully ready. Is it worth it for me to talk about this journey in my application as well? Or should I just like rely on the script to speak for itself? Thank you.
Okay, so it sounds like there's two questions there. One, can the lab help you with sort of the male experience, like the male perspective, or looking for like ways to resources to find out the male perspective? Like, absolutely, those are things that would, naturally come up in your conversations with your story editor. Yes, I think that those are the kinds of things that we look at in a script, right? Like the perspectives and making sure that everything is landing where you want. Should you talk about this in your application? Yes, the application is really helpful to know where you think the piece is at, what things you want to focus on, where you feel like your weaknesses are, where you would like guidance, because that helps to kind of go, for us to go, okay, well, those are areas we can help in, or maybe these are areas actually no, that would be better served elsewhere. So knowing what it is, your connection to the material is super important. Why you're telling this story, why you care about it, why you're passionate, your personal, relationship to the piece is super important. And then evaluating where you feel the piece is at and where you could use help. is really important in the application. So yes,
I think I may also have an offering when it comes to like the whole research component, like even just in working with you, like the questions just come up and then you decide, oh shoot, I have to learn more. So like I was working with like the universal, what does racially based discrimination look like in a universal healthcare like system? I didn't know the answer, so I had to actively seek out people to talk to them in order to get the answer so I could write it into my script. And the other thing when it comes to like, I think sometimes, and like maybe Ruth, stop me if I'm wrong, but like in some ways I feel like it's a pitch when it comes to your application, which, and like usually that just answers 3 questions, which is, what is this story? Why are you the one to tell it? And why is it relevant to the times right now? So those are 2 offerings as well.
That's perfect, Aisha, and that's exactly, it's a great way to look at that application in answering those 3 things. And I would say too that as far as the questions that come up, you're continuing to do research, like on the soup kitchen now, and like you're just adding things where you have to do further research, and you want to ground it in the reality, right?
Endless research. We love research.
Ruth, I'm going to throw just some quick answers here. How long should the artist statement be?
I mean, as long as you want, I guess, but I feel like a couple of paragraphs will really, that's really the artist statement is where you can really help us understand what you're trying to say and your connection to that material. So.
And again, for this one is sort of bullet points or whatever. What parameters or screenplay are they evaluate the jury that reads all of the applications? What are they evaluating? Artistic merit, marketability, what kind?
I would say all of the above, right? Like, can we make it in Canada? Is it a story that we haven't heard before? Is there a unique point of view? Is it discovering something, new? Like, we're not interested in developing a Marvel movie or anything that has that, is it commercial? That's totally fine. But we're really looking for like new, what is the story that hasn't been told, that we haven't seen a bazillion times? Or is the execution of it, in a unique stylized way, right? And it should be able to be produced within the Canadian system. So, not a $50 million, whatever, Guardians of the Galaxy, right? We just can't do it. Well, I mean, you could develop it, but you're never going to be able to make it in Canada. So,
can you apply with a full treatment instead of the script? No.
No.
And how many pages would you say? No more than?
Well,
you have 120 pages written on the website. Is that what you want to read? Yeah.
So 120. 120 is our absolute cutoff, but please be closer to 100.
Yeah.
It's extremely rare these days to have something that is much longer than 100. So
okay, I'm going to throw 2 last ones in here. What kind of support material do you want to see? Like the pitch deck, a lookbook? What other examples?
If you're the writer director and you happen to have those things, the lookbook, pitch deck, maybe you've shot a proof of concept, all of that is really helpful because it's great context for evaluating a piece. So anything but if you also don't have those things and you just have the script, then be very clear in your artist statement about what your intentions are.
Okay, that sounds good. And then, so I've got a really great pilot for a TV series. No. Yes.
Well, that's awesome. But I would apply to a different program. We don't have
right. We don't take anything like that. We did actually get somebody did that last year. And then one that we get, the other letter of recommendation is kind of, people are really wondering about that. It's not, I don't think it's mandatory, but it just adds extra to your application. So don't be too much. But who should write that letter?
Yeah, I mean, don't worry too much about that. But if you feel like you've got somebody who can speak to something that, once again, your application it either supports your application or sheds a different kind of light, anybody who so like maybe perhaps a professor or another film industry person or one of our alumni. We've definitely had that, someone, if Julia sends me a letter or your letter of reference is from Julia, that's going to speak volumes, right? Because Julia's not going to get behind somebody who, and you know, one of our alumni obviously knows the rigor, so they're speaking to that as well, your ability to meet the expectations of the lab. But
Okay,
don't
we have we have a question from Alexander.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Alex.
Hi, my question is actually for Julia. It's funny that you just mentioned her, but because your project sounded quite unique in that you already had funding. So I'm just curious, how did the lab, like what aspect of the lab did you find super beneficial, like going forward into production?
Yeah, I mean, we had half our funding, so there was still like a journey
like a
to
bit.
go on. Yeah, but I think for me it was really finding the core of the script and understanding the reasons for each decision from my perspective. It was also, I think, useful for me too, just because it was a first feature, to have the support in terms of learning how to collaborate with a film director and producer, which is very different than theater and very different on a feature than on a short, and very different with each person, I think. But so in that sense, from an industry perspective, it was really useful for me to learn the way that people work and like what's appropriate and how to collaborate within this specific framework, which was great. And there were also things like, I was so lucky right after we did a reading in Vancouver that Adam came to, and Sarah and Shona, which was so useful to hear. So there were so many things in terms of building the script, which went through so many changes and iterations. That was really helpful. Yeah.
Cool. Also, just last thing, I saw you did a film with my friend Anna, which I loved at TIFF. It's nothing, so that was great.
Oh,
Just wanted to
thank
say,
you.
great work.
Oh, thank you so much.
Such a small world. Okay, I knew we wouldn't get enough time for all the questions, but you guys have my email. It's also connected on our webpage for the Screenwriters Lab. Anything that I don't know, I'll reach out to Ruth. You can, ask questions. We're looking forward to some really great applications this year. Again, it's super hard to choose. As Ruth and Dennis can attest to, it's like you could take lots more than 6. We keep it to 6 because that's just the easiest to use the mentorship. We'll be announcing who our third mentor is shortly, and just some logistics. We are holding it in person. The phase 1's always held in person in Whistler, BC. It's held there from, we've got it down May 6th to 10. So if you're looking at the dates on our key dates on the webpage, if you can't make those dates, you'll just try reapplying next year, because we have to stick to those. We can't accommodate around certain dates. And yeah, just do your best. And I'd like something really positive from everybody. I'm going to start with Aisha. What's your words of wisdom for people applying for this?
Words of wisdom.
Yeah.
Oh wow, words of wisdom. Usually I always have something to say. I don't really know. I know it's trite, but it's true. Be yourself and just be honest. Like, posturing is going to get you nowhere because they can smell it. And yeah, just be yourself. Be yourself. It's trite, but it's true.
No, I'm gonna thank you for saying that, because it's absolutely true. When you read an application, you do not need to sell us on the lab. Like when you're like, you don't got to do that kind of like sales thing. I mean, I'm assuming you're applying, you want to be in it and you think it has value to you, or you wouldn't be applying. So don't do that. Like Aisha's right. You can smell it. I can tell. Just don't bother. You're wasting your precious words. Be yourself.
Yeah.
Who are you? Why do you want to do that? You go.
Well, and that also goes along with we've added a little pitch component this year. It's not really a pitch, but it's like, just tell us about yourself on video. It's kind of fun to have that little bit of your log line, and then we get excited. It just puts a face to your application as well. So just like everybody's saying, just be yourself. So Adam, what would you suggest for somebody applying for a program like this?
Maybe along those lines, but I feel like having a project that really feels close to you and that you're passionate about, I think comes through so much. I felt that for myself, and just kind of looking at the other folks in our year, and reading their scripts, it just made so much sense after I got to know them. Like, yes, I get why, you're writing this script and how it connects to you and all of that. And they felt like they were all such deeply personal and passionate projects and connected to the writers so well, which I think ultimately also helps you just write a better script as well.
That's good. There's a lot of peer mentorship that goes on in this lab. All of our labs, we really do that. And Julia, what would you say?
Yeah, I think it's all along the same lines, but I would say really know the why of why you want to tell the story and why the project is important to you, and in a way that is really personally connected. And because it's such a long process and it is so personal, and so the reason for you to do it needs to be important and you need to be connected to it, and to be able to say that as succinctly and as passionately as possible, I think is really helpful. And the nice thing about that too is then when you see the project through, you get to bring that to audiences and talk to them about that reason too. And so it's kind of a full circle, but I think knowing the why to sustain you and for applications like this is really important.
And Dennis, tell us what you're looking forward to this year.
I'm looking forward to a great group of 6 people who are passionate and willing to put in the work. One of the things I just love to say is that one of the beauties is, for me, I mean, as a screenwriter, my nightmare is a story editor dive bombs in, gives me a whole bunch of notes, leaves me with a whole bunch of crap on the floor. My script is a mess. I don't know what to do with it. And then I have to go back and sit by myself and pick up all the pieces. And this program is geared to answering that problem, because we are with you every step of the way, right? We do not leave you alone. It's in a lot of ways, it's like, maybe that's the nightmare, but that's the thing you're signing on for. And that's why in return, what we want is that commitment, that especially after that week intensive at Whistler, where we really tear through the script and really try to figure out what's going on, what the heartbeat of it is, and how to make, help find the path forward. That over the summer, you've got a mentor that you're talking to about your changes. If you run into a jam, or if you've got a draft, or as you're working through the outline, whatever you're doing, you have somebody with you, coaching you, being there with you, and helping you get to a place that by the end of the summer, you have a workable script that then will be marketable, and then we work on the marketing of it. So it's the overall scheme that's really important, and it's that commitment that everybody who comes into we're really looking for from people who come into the program, that they are just game, and the writers that are today are proof of the concept. Adam, Aisha, Julia have all came in just passionate, and that passion has had a huge payoff. And if you've got that, it is part one of the equation. If you got the passion linked to that, the effort that you're willing to put in, we're there with you. And that's the commitment that we're making.
Right.
Perfect. And last word, Ruth.
Well, just with all of that said, a good way to sort of like vibe check all of this is how you're feeling as you've listened to this. Does it make you feel like, oh, that will be, I hear the rigor, I hear the intensity, and that makes me excited. Like I want to dive in, I want to work hard. And then when you're answering the questions in the application, do you get excited thinking about your artist statement and what you're trying to say and your connection to the material? Like you can check in with yourself. If going through the application kind of gets you excited and hearing this gets you excited about the process, you're on the right path and you should probably apply. If going through the application and hearing this makes you feel like, God, weighed down, or like, oh, I just don't want to, I don't know what I'm trying to say, then maybe you wait a year, right? So you can sort of do a vibe check here with, ideally, even just hearing this and this process and knowing what's ahead, you should feel excited about that. And if you're not, then maybe, you want to wait. Because this is very much exactly what you're going to get into.
But it's super fun and super productive, and every year we have successes, and it's amazing. So I want to thank everybody for coming. And if you, like I said, if you have any questions, reach out to me. I could always reach out to Ruth as well after. So I want to thank our guests. Thank you for taking time out of your day for us today. And Dennis, always nice to see you. And we're going to start the process. What's the deadline, Ruth? It's February 15th.
I think so, yeah.
Testing. February 15th is the deadline. We're also launching our Producers Lab, which works alongside this one. It's being launched on February 1st. So spread the word on that one because it's just as amazing as this one. So thank you so much. And thank you for everybody for coming.